Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're setting the stage for an absolutely incredible journey far, far back in time. I'm talking about an era long before the first cities were ever drawn up, before kingdoms rose and fell, and honestly, long before the Great Pyramids of Egypt were even a thought. We are going back tens of thousands of years, to a time when humanity was fighting a daily, truly desperate battle against nature itself.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What is humanity's oldest architecture? Seriously, what immediately pops into your head? Stonehenge? Maybe the ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia? You know, most of us are completely conditioned to picture these grand monuments from just a few thousand years ago. But to find the real answer, the true beginning, we need to completely shatter those assumptions and push our timeline way, way further back into the shadows of prehistory. Well, brace yourselves, because exactly 23,000 years ago, right in the absolute frozen grip of the Ice Age, a group of prehistoric humans living inside a cave in what is now modern-day Greece built something truly extraordinary. They didn't just find a shelter, they built a simple stone barrier. And let me tell you, this was no ordinary pile of rocks. It's actually believed to be the oldest known man-made stone wall on Earth.
The 23,000-year-old secret, hidden in the cliffs of Greece. So, nestled right beneath these towering limestone cliffs, near the famous monasteries of Meteora, lies the mysterious Theopetra Cave. This enormous shelter overlooks a landscape that's been shaped by millions of years of geological change. Its entrance spans nearly 17 meters wide. To put that in perspective, that's about the width of a standard bowling alley. And beneath its dirt floor, layer by layer, it preserves an astonishing 130,000 years of human history.
The deadly Ice Age fighting the frozen grip. To really appreciate what was built inside this cave, we absolutely have to understand the terrifying conditions our ancestors were facing. In this story, nature itself is the ultimate antagonist.
You see, 23,000 years ago, Earth was trapped in what's known as the last glacial maximum. Basically, this was the absolute coldest phase of the last ice age. We're talking huge ice sheets covering much of northern Europe and temperatures that just plummeted dramatically. Powerful, freezing winds swept across the entire continent, and food was incredibly scarce. It was a completely hostile, terrifying world where your survival depended entirely on intelligence, cooperation, and just constant, non-stop innovation.
And for the hunter-gatherers living in Theopetra, well, they had a very specific, literally life-threatening problem. Remember that massive 17-meter-wide entrance? It was actually a fatal flaw. While it provided great shelter from storms and passing predators, it acted like a giant wind tunnel. It allowed these icy, freezing winter winds to just rush directly inside the cave. In those harsh winter conditions, the temperature drops could quickly, and I mean very quickly, become deadly.
So, the inhabitants faced a truly desperate situation. They could simply try to endure those deadly winter winds, which, let's be real, almost certainly meant freezing to death, or they had to innovate. And that desperate need led to a remarkable, world-changing decision. They chose to build a protective wall. Humanity's first architecture, an engineering solution. When archaeologists discovered the remains of this stone barrier near the entrance of the cave, they used advanced scientific dating to pinpoint exactly when it was constructed. But what's really fascinating here is understanding that this wall was carefully positioned to reduce their exposure to the freezing winds, while still allowing the humans to easily access the cave. It wasn't just decorative. It was a highly practical, totally calculated engineering solution.
And this single discovery? It caused a massive paradigm shift in the scientific community. For decades, scientists firmly believed that sophisticated building techniques and environmental engineering only appeared much, much later, closer to the agricultural revolution. But Theopetra completely shattered that idea. It proved, without a doubt, that humans were actively modifying and engineering their environments an astounding 23,000 years ago.
Let's break down exactly what this simple pile of rocks proves about our ancestors. First, it represents careful foresight and planning. Second, it requires complex human cooperation and teamwork just to physically move and stack the stones. It also showcases incredibly advanced survival skills. But ultimately, it's architecture born purely from necessity. It is a literal, physical manifestation of the human will to live.
Life inside Theopetra, a home for generations. Okay, let's shift our focus away from the bitter cold outside and step a bit deeper inside the cave. Because the people who built this wall, they were not just primitive, mindless savages trying to stay warm.
Archaeologists uncovered thousands of artifacts that vividly, almost magically, bring this space back to life. They found stone tools carefully crafted for hunting and cutting, animal hides and bones that were used for clothing and bedding. They found charcoal from ancient fires where families would huddle together for warmth. Guys, they even found the fossilized footprints of children playing in the ash. It paints such an emotional, deeply humanizing picture of intelligent people with real families and traditions.
And just think about the immense scale of time we're dealing with here. 130,000 years ago, the cave was first occupied by early humans. Then, around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals completely disappeared from Europe. And evidence actually suggests both Neanderthals and modern humans used this exact shelter over time. Then, 23,000 years ago, the stone wall was built during the Ice Age. So, Theopetra serves as this incredibly rare evolutionary bridge, seamlessly connecting entirely different chapters of human history.
But the cave holds a deeply emotional truth about our ancestors, too. Archaeologists discovered ancient graves inside, suggesting these early inhabitants actually practiced funeral rituals. They didn't just discard the deceased, they buried their dead with intention, with care, emotion, and memory. It shows a profound respect for loved ones and suggests that Theopetra wasn't just a physical shelter from the storm, it was a sacred place for both the living and the dead.
Why Theopetra matters, the beginning of architecture. Let's zoom out for a second to look at the macro significance of this wall. Because beyond just being a really cool archaeological mystery, this is a story of profound human resilience and quite literally an absolute refusal to surrender to nature. The absolutely crucial point is this. Human intelligence didn't just suddenly appear with modern society. Not at all. It existed tens of thousands of years ago, right there in caves illuminated by firelight. These inhabitants faced extreme cold, incredibly limited resources, and constant everyday danger, yet they survived by actively shaping their environment. This simple wall was humanity's very first step toward bending the physical world to our comfort and our protection.
Just look at the trajectory this set in motion. It started right here, with a simple wall of stone built against the biting cold. But that exact same ingenuity, it evolved over millennia into magnificent castles and soaring pyramids, which in turn paved the way for the massive modern skyscrapers that define our skylines today. The entire monumental evolution of human building traces its roots right back to the frozen winds of Theopetra. To perfectly summarize the enduring legacy of these ancient builders, I want to read a powerful quote directly from our source material. It says, "The past is never dead. It still lives beneath our feet." Deep inside a cave in Greece, hidden beneath layers and layers of time, this silent monument to humanity's earliest ingenuity still stands. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The people of Theopetra built a barrier against extinction that has managed to last 23,000 years, fundamentally changing how we understand our own history in the process. So I leave you with this. What monuments of survival will we leave behind?